And what am I talking about? What am I talking about? Just like I stated, this Friday, Donald Trump, under the Alien Enemies Act of 1978, okay, Saturday, that is, my apologies, Saturday, signed this act to send 261 undocumented immigrants, okay, to El Salvador. But the question is, I don't think people understand the levels, okay, how some critics, specifically Democrats, are stating that this is not constitutional. This is not fair. Okay. Some people are stating that this is not fair. And the reason they're stating this is because hundreds of mostly Venezuelan alleged gang members were deported from the United States to a prison in El Salvador. And this very well-known prison in El Salvador goes by the name of Civic. It is known as one of the most dangerous prisons in the entire world. Okay. It is called Civic. Okay. Now, why is this making so much noise? We're going to talk about just how much, I'm going to show you guys just how much this is making a lot of noise, right? Because some of these immigrants, it is alleged that they are not gang members. Some of these alleged undocumented immigrants are not only not gang members, right? But they were here in America through the asylum, okay, seeking asylum under the Biden administration. So this is why, people are wondering, okay, who's telling the truth? Who is actually telling the truth? And thank you guys for coming in. Earth Angel says Elon and the little trying to steal that. And I put my pocketbook on democracy, not Donald Duck. And thank you guys for coming in. Jerry Moody says, sorry, you're misinformed. Barry says, illegal is illegal. And thank you guys for coming in. Shout out to Barry London. Shout out to Justin Michael. Shout out to Earth Angel. Shout out to Jerry Moody. Earth Angel says, Jerry, sorry you're consumed by that cult. So again, chat with someone that cares about what you think. Thank you guys for coming in. One time in Bandcamp says, Ed Angel, why do the Democrats think tax money is theirs? Great question. One time in Bandcamp. Excellent question. Jerry Booney says, bet you don't find many of them in your circles. And see, this is what I wanted to talk about. Like, it's so much going on. And my apologies, I've missed a lot. But I had to deal with my technicalities, okay, going on my end with my phone. But just like I stated, with this particular prison in El Salvador, known as Civic, okay, this prison is a very dangerous. Well, it's not dangerous. Let's take it back. It's not a dangerous prison, but it is a prison that holds the most dangerous. Okay, dangerous prisoners. Okay, and I want people to also understand this with the 261 undocumented immigrants that were transferred to El Salvador, this prison called Civic. It was an agreement by Donald Trump as well as the president of El Salvador, President Bukele, made an agreement that these prisoners will cost $6 million per year for these prisoners to be in his prison. Okay, $6 million. That's $20,000 per person. I want people to think about that. That is a lot of money. Now, while all of this was going on, okay, now how does this unconstitutional question come in? right? Is it unconstitutional what Donald Trump did, even on this aspect? People are saying that because, for one, okay, according to reports, they cannot quote unquote determine, justify exactly that all of these undocumented immigrants are quote unquote gang members. Okay, and also they're also stating, based off of this judge, because on the same day that Donald Trump signed this act that sent the 261 undocumented immigrants to El Salvador, that is when a federal judge came in and tried to halt this, tried to quote unquote halt this, stop all of this at once. He tried. And this federal judge goes by the name of Judge Boasberg. Okay. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to show you guys the quote unquote comments and the response, first by Pam Bondi, the United States Attorney General. Yes, she had some quote unquote views on this. Okay. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Ground. Now, I want people to understand this. This federal judge, Judge James Boasberg, ordered Trump's administration this week to submit answers to questions about this deportation. Okay, this deportation that took place on Saturday. Okay, he wants answers to these questions. Now, in regards to these questions, what are these questions that he wants the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, to answer? The first one: what time did the plane take off? Okay, from the United States soil, and from where? The second question: what time did the plane leave the U.S. airspace? Third question: what time did it land? Next question: when were individuals transferred out of the United States custody? And the last question: how many were aboard? And the reason this federal judge, Judge Boasberg, is asking these questions is because a number of these illegal, let's say undocumented immigrants, okay, they are not being quote unquote held accountable. And when I say held accountable, okay, some of these immigrants, these families don't know where their loved ones are, right? And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about when it comes down to some of these family members that do not even know where their loved ones are. Okay. And one particular gentleman that has made headlines is a 24-year-old by the name of Mr. Javier Garcia. Okay. According to Javier Garcia's mother, she stated that on Saturday morning from a detention center in Texas, that was the last time she spoke to her son. Okay. And according to her, she said that Mr. Javier Garcia told her that he was going to be deported with a group of other Venezuelans. Okay. However, she said, according to her son, he wasn't sure where they were going. And shortly after this, on Saturday, she said that her son's name disappeared from the website of the United States Immigration. Okay, it just disappeared. And she stated that she has not heard from him since Saturday. And thank you guys for coming in. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Ground. Now, I'm going to show who I'm talking about in a minute. Thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And as of now, we have 55% says Trump is not following the Constitution, and 45% says yes, he is following the Constitution. And thank you guys for coming in. Now I'm going to play a little clip of Pam Bondi, because she stated her case on this. She stated her reasoning, okay? Because now we're in a position where, okay, lawsuits have been filed, okay? Injunctions have been filed. And even right now, because of the actions that took place on Saturday, March the 15th, of sending 261 immigrants to El Salvador, now there is a matter that we have at hand when it comes down to people are stating, why did the Trump administration not respect the federal judge's request to pause, okay, put a pause when it comes down to sending these immigrants, these illegal immigrants, to El Salvador, okay? And this weekend, or should I say this week, there is supposed to be an appeals coming up. And I want to say it's going to come this Monday. I think it's going to come up this Monday, where there's going to be an appeals, okay? And the case between the Department of Justice as well as the Judge Boasberg, federal judge, they will have a conversation in the court when it comes down to these actions, because this federal judge, James Boasberg, he did hint, okay, in regards to questioning his frustrations with the Trump administration not heeding to his request to put a halt, okay, to sending these immigrants, okay. And his questions also, because of his frustration, was, should there be consequences to this? Should there actually be consequences to Donald Trump not, what should I say, the Trump administration, Department of Justice, not following his instructions, the federal judge's instructions? And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button. Now, when it comes down to the Trump administration, they have responded with a submission, okay, to the federal judge's pause. And they're stating, I want people to understand this, they argued that they needed to move. They needed to move these undocumented immigrants, okay? And they cannot, quote unquote, give classified information, release classified information out to the public. And based off of the Trump administration, they're stating that this is what James Boasberg is requesting, okay? He is requesting for classified information, okay? And according to the Trump administration, this is not safe. This is causing it to not be safe, okay, a safe matter, and also a legal matter. So we're going to show a little bit of just a little bit of what Pam Bondi on her side of this, okay, as well as Donald Trump, because of what happened on Saturday. Not only did the actions, okay, affect these undocumented immigrants, right, but now you have the quote unquote Supreme Court of Justices getting involved, okay? Because Donald Trump he stated that the federal judge should be impeached. He stated that this federal Judge James Boasberg, should be impeached. However, a quote unquote Supreme Court of Justice, one of the chief justices, he stated that Donald Trump should not make comments as far as impeaching someone just because he disagrees with them, right? And the person that we're talking about, thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button. I'm going to show a clip of Pam Bondi. She's not playing. She's not playing with nobody today. She's not playing with nobody this week. Okay. And in a recent interview, this is fair use, fair use. Thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button. She's not playing today. She's not going to be playing. And we're going to give a brief little, just a brief little clip of what the beautiful Pam Bondi had to say in regards to Donald Trump. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the platform. Thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button. One moment.
Federal judge trying to control foreign policies, trying to control the Alien Enemies Act, which they have no business presiding over. And there are 261 reasons why Americans are safer now. That's because those people are out of this country. The judge had no business, no power to do what he did. And well, he came in on an emergency basis on a Saturday with very, very short notice, if any, to our attorney to run in the courtroom.
And thank you guys for coming in. Who is she talking about, ladies and gentlemen? She's talking about this federal judge by the name of James Bollesberg. Okay, this is who she's talking about, right? And this is the same judge that, according to Donald Trump, should be impeached himself. Okay, Donald Trump made an announcement that this judge that tried to put a pause on the deportation of those 261, quote unquote, 261 illegal undocumented immigrants, sending them to El Salvador, according to Donald Trump. Okay, it was of just cause. It was of just cause. But according to this federal judge by the name of James Bollesberg, he stated that this was not constitutional. It's not constitutional. And it was not fair because these immigrants have not had a sound just cause of due process. Now, when it comes down to this person right here, the beautiful Pam Bondi, okay, she stated that 261 undocumented immigrants, these are the people that needed to go back, that needed to go to a prison, okay, to protect here in America, to protect this country, okay, to get this country back into shape, in control. Now, Pam says, I want people to understand this. Pam says judges and Democrats are trying to take control of Americans' money, education, military, and the federal government. As what she said that this federal judge by the name of James Bollesberg is doing. Okay. And she even stated that one judge, and thank you guys for coming in, and this is fair use. She even stated that this one judge, okay, is still trying to allow, quote unquote, transgender, okay, in the military. So that's kind of giving you an idea of just how left and how right we are when it comes down to what's going on here in America. Because if you guys can really take it back, during the Joe Biden administration, we did have transgender in the military. We did have transgender when it comes down to topic and conversation when it comes down to the school system, when it comes down to the Department of Education. So these are topics that, let's just put it like this, okay? Transgender, as of now, it is not okay in the military due to the Trump administration, okay? And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're going to have a brief pause. And you are listening to Politic Ground. This is fair use. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, commenting, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Now, back to the topic at hand, where we are. Now, I want people to understand when it comes down to this gentleman right here, okay, that you're looking at, he is also in the topic of conversation when it comes down to the 261 immigrants, undocumented immigrants that were sent to El Salvador. And the person that you're looking at, that is the Secretary of State, Mark Rubio. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I want to make sure you guys can see. Now, when it comes down to Mark Rubio, according to what was discussed, he was one of the individuals in regards to making this quote-unquote agreement, okay? Getting this agreement together of $6 million a year fee, because that's basically what it is, $6 million fee for President Bukele to hold these 261 immigrants in his prison of Civic. Okay, and that's $20,000 per person. Now, just like I stated, when it comes down to Pam Bondi, she has said that the Democrats, the judges, they are just trying to take control, just like they did prior, trying to take control of the Americans. In her words, Americans' money, education, military, and the federal government itself. According to her, she said the fact that a federal judge tried to intervene, okay, the deportation of criminals, okay, according to her, these criminals, okay, this just shows just how these government, okay, is trying to take control of the Americans, okay? And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button. You're listening to Politic Graham. Now, we do have another person, okay? The person in the room of all, Donald Trump. Yes, he has made comments, okay, in regards to what is going on. And what do we have now? Now here on Thursday that is going on, that is the result of the deportation of those 261 illegal undocumented immigrants. Some of them say aliens, as they say. Donald Trump had a quote-unquote response to the criticism, because a number of people are questioning why Donald Trump is doing this. But I want people to understand this. Donald Trump told us all why, okay? He said this, and I want people to understand this. What you're looking at, and I everything that you're looking at, this is what I typed, this is what I wrote. This is the quote-unquote President Trump's Agenda 47 20 core promises. These are one of the 20 core promises that Donald Trump promised everybody. People said, why should we vote for you, Donald Trump? And he gave us the reasons, okay? 20 promises. So he told us, Americans, the 75 million people that voted for him, why you would be a benefit to vote for him. And as you can see, the number one thing is to what? Seal the border, stop the migrant invasion. Okay, stop the migrant invasion. And a part of stopping this migrant invasion is where we are now today. And thank you guys for coming in. That is where we are today. Okay, where we are today, just like I discussed before, Donald Trump signed and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Want to make sure we're all on the same page. I want people to understand this. This is what he said the Americans wanted, right? Because that was the first thing on his agenda, to seal the border. Okay? And if you guys don't know what transpired on March the 15th, Saturday, thank you guys for coming in. If you guys don't know what transpired, Donald Trump sent, and I want people to actually see what I'm talking about. He sent, as you can see, 261 undocumented, according to the Trump administration, according to the DOJ, undocumented illegal immigrants that were gang members, okay, with the agreement, okay, under President Bukele of El Salvador, sent them to the mega prison called Civic, okay? And thank you guys for coming in. And these are the quote-unquote immigrants, undocumented immigrants. And this is how I want people to really take a step and just take a step back and look at how they run their prison system in El Salvador. Okay? As you can see, the correction officers, these are guards. Not only they are guards, they have soldiers in this prison system. I really want you guys to just look at how they have these prisoners kneel down with their head down. Their hair is shaved, okay? They are in unison, okay? So that is one thing that this prison system, the prison systems here in America, it doesn't exist. And we're going to talk about just how different it is in El Salvador. Because this particular president, I don't know if you guys can see him. This particular president, President Bukele, okay, a number of people are very happy, okay, excited for him to be the president of El Salvador. A number of people feel that he has saved El Salvador, right? He saved El Salvador because he was the one, when it comes down to starting this quote unquote huge prison named and called Civic. And the president you're looking at right here, this is President Bukele. Okay, he is the one that's made the quote unquote agreement with the Trump administration and had conversations with our Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, to actually house these 261 undocumented immigrants at his prison for the amount of $6 million per year. Now, I want people to also understand this. Okay, with this $6 million per year, okay, and that goes also to where are all these funds going here in America, right? And why do I say that? Because Friday, House of Senate passed the bill, okay, to cut quote unquote $15 billion for non-defense funds. Cut it, okay, and increase the defense funding by $6 billion. So now, the very next day, Saturday, the very next day, that is when Donald Trump signs the Alien Act. Okay, he signs this act of 1798 that allowed him to send 261 undocumented immigrants to El Salvador. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Graham. we're going to have a brief pause. Let me see if I can go into the chat right now. Thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Graham. And we will be back in a few minutes. We're going to have a commercial break. But like I stated for now, okay, with the information that I just gave you guys, okay, is Trump following the Constitution? Okay, so I just showed you guys earlier, okay, Pam Bondi says yes. Okay, they're following the Constitution. If anyone is being unconstitutional, according to Pam Bondi, right? If anybody's being unconstitutional, it is, or should I say, are some of these Democrats as well as some of these federal judges. Okay, according to Pam Bondi, according to Donald Trump, right? And thank you guys for coming in. We're going to have a brief commercial break. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Graham.
So how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
Hello, you guys. This is Politic Graham. I'm just reading the chat as we speak. Now, EW says, I'm going into the comments. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. EW says, make sure you show the other prisoners who are in a good prison that works with the community better than ours. You don't know what these people really did. And EW, shout out to EW. Thank you for coming in. You make a great, conversation, and we're going to talk about it, right? And I don't criticize. We have a civil conversation and discussion. Shout out to EW. I'm going to see if I can highlight that comment that you made, EW, because I want people to, we all need to have a, really just sit back and look. Okay. EW said, and I quote, make sure you show other prisoners who are in a good prison that works with the community better than ours. You don't know what these people really did. Now, I'm gonna welcome you, EW. I'm just trying to find your comment in the chat so I can highlight it for the world to see. Okay, and thank you guys for coming in. Now, I want people to understand this. When it comes down to this prison system that we're speaking of, it is not the same type of prison system that you have here in America. Now, I will say the prison systems, it's not, in my personal view, the prison systems it's not a place to quote unquote, be a better person, as they say, right? It's not a place for that, right? That's my personal view on it. Now, I'm going to actually show a little bit of the prison system in El Salvador. And I'm going to break it down a little bit when it comes down to this prison that we're speaking of and we're talking about. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And shouts out to everyone. Now, I want people to really understand, okay, this particular prison system that was started by the current president, President Bukele, okay, this is not a prison that everybody would want to go to, okay? It's not one of those prisons, okay? It's not. And why do I say that? Because this particular prison, one cell houses between 60 to 80 people in one cell. Okay, so I want you guys to take that for a minute. Take that in, sink that in, okay? And in addition to that, I want to show it for you guys so we can all be on the same page, because shout out to EW. I really want to find find that statement and I want to highlight it, okay? And shout out to EW for that comment. And thank you guys for coming in. I want to show it. Trying to get you guys to be able to see it on my end. Okay, now the picture that you're looking at, this is how the immigrants, okay, were welcomed, okay, by this mega prison in El Salvador, okay? This is how they were welcomed. And when it comes down to this prison system that I'm showing you guys, that I will show you guys, I'll say it that way. When it comes down to this prison system, I'm going to break it down even more, okay? This facility, these prisoners, they never go outside. They stay in their cell, okay, 23 hours, and they're only out between 30 minutes to an hour per day, but it is still within the same building, okay? They never get out. The lights are always on 24/7, okay? And as you can see, this facility can hold up to for each area, because it can hold up to, want to make sure I'm right with this, it has 8 pavilions, and each pavilion can hold 40,000 people, each pavilion. So I want people to take that into aspect, okay? I really want people to really take that into aspect. And with this particular prison system in El Salvador, and shout out to EW, I want to talk about it, right? Now, are these prisoners giving workshops? Are these prisoners giving programs? Okay? Are these prisoners entering dining halls or cafeterias or gyms? No. Okay? When it comes down to this facility that is in El Salvador, this facility does not offer workshops and programs. It only offers workshops and programs for the facility workers, okay? It only offers, okay, dining halls, break rooms, gyms, board games to the people that work there, okay? So this is not a place that anyone would want to go to. It's not a place. Okay? This is not a place anybody would want to go to. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Okay? And the prison system that I'm talking about is CICOT in El Salvador. Okay? And this particular prison system, 261 immigrants were sent to this facility on March the 15th, Saturday, under the Alien Enemies Act that was signed by Donald Trump. And under this Alien Enemies Act, it allows the deportation without a hearing of anyone from the designated enemy country who is not a naturalized citizen. So basically, Donald Trump is calling these individuals, okay, long story short, not only is he calling these individuals, quote unquote, alien immigrants, he's calling these gang members, okay? He's calling these individuals gang members. And President Trump's administration, according to the reports, will pay El Salvador president, okay, the administration, President Bukele's administration, $6 million per year to house these alleged members that we're speaking about. These gang members, these alleged gang members. Okay. Now, each person is going to cost $20,000. And I want people to also understand this. And I want to be able to show it to you guys. Now, how does Mark Rubio come into this? Because Mark Rubio had a conversation. He was part of this agreement. Okay, having this agreement signed, sealed, and delivered. What is this agreement? This agreement that President El Salvador's administration will house 261 alleged gang members at his mega prison in El Salvador, okay, for the price of $6 million per year. Now, in addition to that, according to reports, additional $15 million was put to the side as well. And $15 million was put to the side as well, just in case these 261 alleged alien immigrants or undocumented immigrants, okay, if they need to be housed at CICOT for an additional year. Okay, so this is how Mark Rubio comes into this. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for coming in. We welcome super stickers if you would like to support the platform, as well as membership. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for the like. Let's get those likes up. Now, let's get more into detail because of what EW asked, okay? I got to call him out for what it is, okay? Now, people are saying, what is the big deal? What is the big deal about this prison? Okay, I want people to understand, in El Salvador, it is not how it is here in America. Okay, and what do I mean? It is not how it is not in America, because in El Salvador, I want people to understand this. El Salvador was so dangerous. Okay, prior to President Bukele, prior to him coming into office, this gentleman right here, prior to him coming into office, it was so dangerous that children were afraid to go to school. It was so dangerous in El Salvador. Not only were children afraid to go to school, people were afraid to even walk the streets of El Salvador. But President Bukele, how does he come into this? Because a number of people look at him as the hero. And that is very different from what people are looking at President Bukele here in America. Some individuals, preferably Democrats, okay? Preferably Democrats. But when it comes down to El Salvador, I want to make sure you guys can see, okay? Because of him, President Bukele, that is, he opened up this prison back on March of 2024. Okay, he opened it up, and as of now, should I say back then on in the year of 2024, over 110,000 people are at this facility. I repeat, over 110,000 people are at this prison in El Salvador. Okay, and this particular place, like I stated, El Salvador is not a place where, you know, they don't do due process. Okay, your due process, and I'm going to show a clip. Okay, going to show a clip. Just like how a lot of these individuals say, "Oh, our president has 34. He's a convicted felony of 34 felonies, right?" But in El Salvador, there is not a such thing as due process. Okay? If you have anything that are tattoos that is similar to gang affiliated, okay? Tattoos on your body, that is an automatic arrest. And all they have to do in El Salvador to arrest you, all they need is your name and address. That's all they need. Okay? And when it comes down to the police, right? You know, people here in America have been saying, "Oh, the police is police is so bad. They need to go to prison. They're not treating us right. This. We don't have justice." Well, in El Salvador, like I stated, the police can come to your door and ask you for your name, right? Ask you for your name and your ID. Guess what? If the name matches what's in their file, automatic arrest. And not only is it an automatic arrest, there is no due process. And what do I mean when I say there is no quote unquote due process? Because your due process doesn't start until 2 years while you're in prison there. I repeat, your due process doesn't start until 2 years while you're in prison. So you have to do a minimum of 2 years of prison. That's what it is in El Salvador. And this is one of the reasons, so many of the reasons why individuals here are questioning, why did Donald Trump send 261 individuals, aliens that is, right? And they cannot confirm that all of them are gang members. Okay? Now, this is what the left says. But remember what I showed you earlier, what Pam Bondi said. Okay? What she said. In her words, she stated, and I quote, and thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button. According to Pam Bondi, she's stating that these individuals, according to her, when I say these individuals, Democrats, and as well as some of these judges, such as Judge James Bonesberg, they just want to take control of the Americans' money, education, military, the American federal government, as a whole. They just want control. And that they are really upset that someone such as the Trump administration comes in and says, no, we're giving it back to the states and to the people. We're giving it back to the Americans. This is according to Pam Bondi. Now, when it comes down to Donald Trump, what is his response? Okay? What is his response? And I'm going to show Donald Trump's response one moment. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And like I stated, we welcome all. Now, I'm going to show you Donald Trump's response one moment. But just like I stated, when it comes down to what goes on in the prison system and the government system in El Salvador, people are questioning, what was this constitutional? Because just like I stated to you guys, right, there is no due process in El Salvador. And the reason that had to be done, because the crime was so bad in El Salvador prior to President Bukele becoming president, there had to be a change of government, right? And why do I say that? Why am I saying this? Okay. In El Salvador, like I stated, you can be arrested just because your name is on the list. Just because you don't own, your name doesn't match that deed. And what do I mean? I give you another example. Officers, police officers and soldiers, they routinely go into neighborhoods, knock on your door, and ask not only what is your name, but can I see the deed? Can I see your deed to the house that you're living in? And if the name doesn't match the deed, oh, here goes an arrest. So this is why I say things are different here than it is there in El Salvador. Very different. And now I already told you, when it comes down to just a little bit of the prison system that was open March of 2024, named, it's called Civic, a mega prison system in El Salvador. I'm going to break down just a little bit about this president that you're looking at. Now, with this President Bukele, okay, some people are saying, well, is he the El Salvador version of a Donald Trump? Is this what could happen to here in America? Are they in cahoots together? Why do I say that? Why do I say that? Now, I don't agree to that, right? I don't agree to that. But the reason people are trying to put President Bukele with Donald Trump, okay, is because President Bukele, prior to him being president, he was a well-known executive, advertising. So he didn't have anything to do with politics. Just like Donald Trump, he wasn't, some people would say he wasn't in politics where, you know, like Maxine Waters, like Elizabeth Warren, or Joe Biden, as they say, be in politics for so many decades, right? But the question is, do they have a voice? Are they listening to the people? Because sometimes you can be in politics for decades, like a lot of these politicians, right? But they don't hear Americans' cause. They don't hear the Americans' wishes and their views and their cry for help. So sometimes individuals such as Donald Trump have to come in, who was not in politics, and look what happened. The people voted for him. So this is what happened when it comes down to in El Salvador. Okay, people got tired of these politicians that were in office for decades, and it's being quote unquote corrupted, as they say, and they wanted somebody that wasn't a politic, okay, that wasn't a politician. So that's why you have President Bukele come in. Okay, now with this president of El Salvador, and the reason I'm talking about this president is because he has made a lot of news and headlines with this prison system. This prison system, okay? And some people are stating that maybe here in America, we need a prison system similar to the prison system that is in El Salvador. Maybe people won't continue to go to prison. And I want people to understand this. Even when it comes down to these correctional officers, as they say, but they're in El Salvador, they're not just correctional officers, right? Half of them are guards, and the other half are actual soldiers, okay? We don't have that here in our prison systems. We don't. We just have correctional officers. No disrespect to the correctional officers, right? No disrespect. But I want people to understand the levels of differences it is. So when someone such as EW puts in the comment that make sure you show the other prisoners who are in a good position, good prison that works with the community better than ours, I can't agree with that. I can't. Okay? And the prison system, I want people to understand this. A prison is not meant to have fun. A prison is meant for imprisonment due to what? Due to a crime where you was not only you was convicted, but you was sentenced. That is what a prison system is meant for. Prison system is not to be meant for comfort. It's not. Okay? That is why, me personally, I'm not really for prisons like that, because you have people in these prison systems, right? And they get out and they're not able to adjust, and they end up back in prison again. Now, when it comes down to CCOT, like I stated, okay, I'm gonna, break it down a little bit. I gotta break it down because this comment in the comments, it was commented. Okay, this prison, okay, is almost 2 miles away. I want people to understand this. Just to go to this prison system, this prison, okay, you have to reach certain checkpoints. The first checkpoint, they check you 2 miles, almost 2 miles away from the prison. You are welcomed by soldiers and guards, almost 2 miles away. Okay, and that is when they check for your passport. That is when they check your vehicle. And they even give you heads up once you make that first checkpoint. They give you heads up and say, the closer you get to the prison, you will not be able to use your cell phone. Why? Because 1.2 miles closer to the prison of CCOT in El Salvador, they have what is known as jammers. Okay? And that is what cuts your phone off, the internet. You're not able to have internet access, Wi-Fi access. You're not able to not even make a call. And why do they have these jammers? Because this is just to let you guys know how this president moves. President Bukele moves. Okay? They have these jammers to prevent prisoners from communicating with anybody while in prison. And also to prevent any form of activity, criminal activity while in prison. Now, see, these are things that we need here, I feel, with these in these prison systems here. I really believe that. Right? Now, unconstitutional, people would say, well, this is unconstitutional. Why? Because when it comes down to Civic prison, I forgot to add this in, ladies and gentlemen. While you're at this prison, whatever your sentence is, you can never talk to your family members. You can never send cards or receive any form of communication with your family members. So I want people to just really think about that. Think about being arrested for one, without due process. And then for two, while you're in prison, you cannot communicate with no individuals that you knew prior to prison. That is what's going on here in El Salvador of this prison. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And when it comes down to CCOT, this particular prison, it holds 19 watchtowers. That includes, like I said, guards and a 15,000 volt electronic fence. So access is limited. It's limited to the world. So I want people to just really take all of that into control and just think about it. And also in this prison, 250 cameras are on and watched by guards 24/7. 250 cameras. So you're in this prison, you're in a cell that holds 60 to 80 people in one cell with no mattress, only one toilet, only one barrel of water, and only one big tub of water for between 60 to 80 individuals to share. And you're in that cell for 23 hours a day with the lights on 24/7. And you don't communicate with anybody. That is the energy that we have here of this prison in El Salvador. And thank you guys for coming in. Going back into the comments, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Graham. Thank you so much for coming in. And we're going to have a brief break. Thank you so much for the likes. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Graham. We're going to have a brief break.
Russia and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country, crooked Joe Biden.
And hello, you guys. You're listening to Politic Graham. Shout out to everyone in the live. Please hit that like button. I'm reading the comments. My apologies. Reading the comments. Thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button. You're listening to Politic Graham. Eula's sister says, I think their system there is too severe. And shout out. And that's why I said what I said to the other person in the comment with whose name is EW. I don't know what planet they're living in, but the system there is very severe, right? Shout out to Eula's sister. It is extremely severe in CCOT. Extremely severe. Art of War says, good morning, news lady. Good morning, Art of War. And my apologies for being behind in the comments because I am multitasking. I'm trying something different in this live today. Nightmare says, making sure I can keep up with you guys in this chat. Nightmare says, Democrats keep crying, won't change the fact that the American people voted for a change, a big change, expose corrupt. Shout out to Nightmare. Thank you for coming in, Nightmare. Humble Pie says, these immigrants were flying in from all areas of the world, bought and paid by the USA system. Shout out to Humble Pie for giving that Humble Pie. And thank you guys for coming in. And please hit that like button. One time in Bandcamp says, my husband served this country for over 30 years, so I know. And that's all 10 generations. Shouts out to One Time in Bandcamp. Thank you guys for coming in. And I salute to all of the service workers out there, especially the people in the military, especially veterans. My salute to you. And thank you for your services. Okay? Thank you so much for your services. And not only do I salute the members of the military, but I also have to give a big shout out to the families, okay, that are also in the military, because that is a great responsibility to have when your loved one is away and you have to keep the house up and keep the family intact. So my salute to you guys, and thank you guys for coming in. Shout out to One Time in Bandcamp. Humble Pie says, my dad passed away from lung cancer after experiencing, oh my goodness, my apologies. My prayers goes out to you, Humble Pie. My prayers goes out to you, Humble Pie. Nightmare says, we are a ground for the other countries to empty their prisons. Nightmare, where are you, Nightmare? Because we don't have so many quote unquote foreigners in our prison systems here like that. Not like it is in El Salvador. And thank you guys for coming in. And like I stated, we welcome everybody. Shouts out to everybody in the live. Earth Angel says, one time, not just about your family, condolences, but in all, we have loved ones that have passed, rather in war or out as a retired veteran. I just want all the passing to be acknowledged. And yes, shouts out to everybody. And my condolences, okay? My condolences. Jay Taylor says, those that say no don't know the Constitution. And thank you for coming in, Jay Taylor. And like I said, this is a platform that welcomes everybody. Hit that like button. And thank you so much for the likes. Let's keep the likes coming. Hit the like, subscribe to the channel. Hit to like, subscribe to the channel. I implore you to actually get in the conversation in this chat. Okay, yes, we're having a conversation in the chat. And the live poll is Trump following the Constitution? 53% says yes, Donald Trump is following the Constitution. 47% says no, he's not following the Constitution. And thank you guys for coming in. Shout out to Jay Taylor. Shout out to everybody in the live. Thank you guys for coming in. And my apologies for being so behind in the chat. Eula's sister says, wow, 60 people in one cell. Yes, 60 people in one cell. And I'm going to pull it up for you guys. So you guys, don't take my word for it. Okay. Don't take my word for it. Okay. When it comes down to this particular facility, okay, this facility is not a place where you can quote unquote make money, because I want people to understand this. Here in the prison systems here, okay, and you guys have seen it even on YouTube. You have a number of quote unquote content creators, right, that were making money, okay, quote unquote passive income, while they were locked up in prison here in America. Okay. And they make very well now. Okay, since they have been released from prison. But I'm using that to say that's one of the differences here in America versus in El Salvador. Big difference. And shout out to Eula sister. Yes, 60 people in one cell. And thank you for coming in. Determined says, come to Canada. America is in the whoa. I cannot repeat that. But thank you for coming in. Humble Pie says, I'm all about saving the manufacturing industry and making energy independence as a priority. Shout out to Humble Pie. Okay, and for people who don't know what Humble Pie is speaking about, that is one of the conversations during this quote unquote ceasefire agreement that is going on between Ukraine and Russia. Okay, and how does this come into play when it comes down to energy infrastructure with America? Okay, becoming more independent and stronger when it comes down to energy infrastructure. Okay, wanting to quote unquote buy raw minerals from Ukraine with that mineral deal. But remember what Donald Trump said. Okay, he wants to quote unquote have peace. He wants peace first before anything between Ukraine and Russia. He wants peace first. Okay, but we have to also take into light that when it comes down to that mineral deal is still in the room, okay, in the room of conversation. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button. One time Bandcamp says that was pandemic in the news. For the first time in my life, I saw parent turning their backs on Biden. And this is why I say, that's why I ask, who is unconstitutional, Joe Biden or Donald Trump, right? Because a number of individuals are looking at the fact that is why America is in the position that it is in now, because of the prior administration, which was the Biden administration, right? for opening the borders, okay, and not having it properly secured. And also, you know, having a number of departments in Washington, D.C., and not being for the quote unquote people, such as shouts out to one time in band camp, USAID department. Okay, and also in example, Department of Education. And thank you guys for coming in. My apologies for being so behind in the comments. Now, when it comes down to El Salvador's, the government system, how it is there, I want people to understand just how these quote unquote gangs are. Okay, just how out of control the gangs were prior to President Bukele. And thank you guys for coming in. My apologies. My apologies for trying to see. My apologies. Now, when it comes down to President Bukele, I want people to understand this. Okay? The gangs were so bad in El Salvador. Okay? The gangs even had control of cemeteries. Why am I speaking of this? Because Bukele, according to reports, he is one of the first officials in history to sign an order to destroy certain cemeteries that held gang members, okay, after their passing. Yes, you heard right. When it comes down to President Bukele. So not only did he want the people to know that yes, you're gonna feel safety here in El Salvador because of this prison system, CCOT. But I want the people that are out there in El Salvador to know that you still will also be protected, okay? And one of those examples, like I stated, when it came down to a cemetery in El Salvador, and I'm going to show a clip, fair use. This particular cemetery, this is a director of a cemetery in El Salvador. Okay. These two women, their faces are blurred out. They came to the cemetery to actually visit a loved one who was a gang member. But when they found out that President Bukele had gave orders to destroy the quote unquote shrines of these members, right? These shrines, these two women, I'm going to see if I can show it to you guys. Thank you guys for coming in. These two women that you're looking at, once they found out that President Bukele had gave orders to destroy these quote unquote shrines at the cemetery, they acted as if they did not know where they were. They went the wrong direction. They said, we don't know, like we was trying to look somewhere else. Right? And the reason they did that, because in El Salvador, with this President Bukele, if you are even seen trying to come to this cemetery to show your condolences to a quote unquote former gang member who passed away, you can also get arrested and sent to prison. Okay, that is the level that it is in El Salvador. Okay, and thank you guys for coming in. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Gram. Going back into the comments. And I want to show this particular person just how chaos it is. I'm not going to say chaos, how controlled it is in El Salvador by the government. I'll say it that way, to prevent these quote unquote gangs. Because ever since President Bukele has became president, the crime has went tremendously down. Okay, the crime has went tremendously down. And thank you guys for coming in. It's going into commercial. One moment. Thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We're going to have a brief little pause, but just like I stated, when it comes down to what's going on in El Salvador, it is very, very much controlled by the government. It is very much controlled, so much to the point, like I stated, I'm going to show you this gentleman right here. This particular gentleman that you're looking at, okay, he has been in prison and he is sentenced 20 years in prison. And he is just one of the prisoners of this prison system that was given 10 minutes to do an interview, only 10 minutes. And when you hear him, you can tell that it sounded as if he sounded like a robot, like, yes, I love, yes, yes, they help feed you, yes, they help take care of me. And I tell you guys, I tell anybody, don't be like me, that is how he was. I'm telling you guys, the way he looks, he's been in that prison so long, right? He's been in the prison so long. Okay? He sounds like a robot. Okay? And like I stated, it is so much in control as far as even the prison system. They only allow him to talk to a reporter for 10 minutes. That's it. He couldn't talk anymore. And I'm going to show another person trying to get to it. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Okay. Just going to show another person. His name is Juan Carlos. If I can get to it, his name is Juan Carlos. And with Juan Carlos, he was wrongfully accused. I can get to it. He was wrongfully accused of, quote unquote, being a criminal. Okay. And come to find out, he was not a quote unquote criminal that they said he was, but he had been in a lower secure imprisonment for 5 months before they realized we have the wrong person. And I want to show you guys how he is, because even with him, with what he went through, he stated that he's happy that there is a president like President Bukele. But I want people to understand, with this gentleman by the name of Juan Carlos, he stayed 5 months in prison, and while he was in prison, he caused, let's just say, there was an infection in his leg. Okay, and now he's walking with a cane. Okay, but even with that being said, he said he still feels safe. He still feels safe in El Salvador because of President Bukele. Okay. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Realm. So I just want to talk about just how, powerful powerful this government is controlled. It's in El Salvador. Okay, so this is just a little bit inside the cell that you're looking at. Now this bucket, a barrel right here, this is the only barrel that these prisoners in this cell that house between 60 to 80 people, this is where they get their water from to drink. Okay, this is where they get their water to drink. And thank you guys for coming in. We're going to have a brief commercial break. And you are listening to quote unquote Politic Graham. This is Politic Graham that you're listening to. Thank you guys for coming in. Thank you so much for coming in.
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia.
And thank you so much, Humble Pie. Shouts out to Humble Pie. Thank you so much for the super sticker. I'm just now reading it, so I'm so sorry. Humble Pie, thank you so much. Shout out to Humble Pie. And thank you, One Time Bandcamp, for handling business. Shouts out to the Mod Squad. Humble Pie, where are you? If you're in the live, let me know you're still in the live. Shouts out to Humble Pie. Shouts out to One Time and Bandcamp for handling business. Humble Pie says, well, it does take time to lay the pipe and tariff the world to bring back their manufacturing here in Detroit and Ohio. And shouts out to Humble Pie. That is why I want people to understand when it comes down to what Donald Trump is trying to bring back. He's trying to bring back what? Manufacturing companies here. He's trying to bring it back here in the United States. He's trying to basically tell these other countries when it comes down to, treating America with being fair, okay? Because like I stated earlier in another live, shall I say, when it comes down to these tariffs, right? It's an free for all, right? Think about the quote unquote North American Free Trade Agreement that was signed during the Bill Clinton administration. Then even when it comes down to the quote unquote USMCA agreement that was signed during the quote unquote Trump administration, his first term, right? That was a quote unquote form of free trade agreement between whom? Mexico, Canada, and the United States. So it's a free-for-all, right? And just like I stated, I can see why some people would say, yes, this is unconstitutional. But I want people to understand this, right? When it comes down to the prison systems here in America, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair when it comes down to these prison systems here in America, right? Because you would be surprised of these corrupted organizations that are making millions and millions of dollars in the prison systems here in America, right? And then they're taking money from us, the taxpayers. They are. So from one aspect, I can see, so why some people would say it's unconstitutional in El Salvador. And then on top of that, for Donald Trump to even be doing business with another president in another country to house, it's basically housing prisoners in their country for a fee. I can see why some people would say that's unconstitutional, but we have to look at the whole spectrum, right? We have to look at the whole spectrum. And even when it comes down to these quote unquote tariffs, right? All of that plays a part. How does that play a part? Break it down. When it comes down to what? The undocumented immigrants. Okay? Working jobs. Okay? Getting paid under the table. Prior to Donald Trump, coming in and, as they say, handling business. So it does make a big difference. And thank you guys for coming in. Randy Smith says, everything I hear you say is the truth. Shout out to Randy Smith. One time in band camp says, I was a sailor at the time, so recognized Biden ordered Afghanistan. The one who said on the beach. Whoa. Shout out to one time in band camps not playing no game. Joe Biden's catching suntans. And thank you guys for coming in. And shout out to the Mod Squad for handling business. Eric Cook says, alleged. What are you talking about? They have tattoos, right? And I want people to understand this. What Eric Cook is saying when it comes down to these criminals, right? Everybody who has tattoos are not criminals, okay? And that is even another reason some people are wrongfully arrested and sent to prison in El Salvador, right? Because some people, it's like I said, here in America, we have so much, how can I say this? We have so much freedom when you're comparing it to places such as El Salvador. Because, like I stated, here in America, there's a thing called freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And just because you have tattoos does not mean you are a criminal. It doesn't mean you're a criminal, right? And I say that to say it is a lot of individuals in prison in El Salvador, okay, that were wrongfully accused of committing crime. And why were they wrongfully accused? Because they had tattoos, and also because, I give you another one, for police officers. Police officers are rewarded, are given rewards to meet a quota. So they would just randomly, some will randomly just, get somebody just to meet that quota for the day. Just being honest, just being straight up, that's what it is. And when it comes down to these tariffs, like I stated, with what Donald Trump is trying to do, is trying to quote unquote get the respect. One time in Bandcamp says, thank you, politics. Always interesting. No, thank you one time. Thank you for being part of this chat and being an advocate, being vocal, being a voice. Okay. And I want to speak on those tariffs, as they say. Okay. Because even when it comes down to the Department of Education, I don't know if people know this, what I am about to say. Okay. But when it comes down to this Department of Education, want to make sure I can pull it up for you guys. Hit that like button. Thank you guys for coming in. When it comes down to the quote unquote executive order that Donald Trump is supposed to sign today, giving the instructions or order to dismantle officially Department of Education, I want people to understand that the Department of Education, I want to be able to show it to you guys. One moment. Thank you guys for coming in. Want to be able to show it to you guys when it comes down to this Department of Education. One moment. When it comes down to this Department of Education, now I'm going to just say it. The Department of Education was established by Jimmy Carter. Okay? For those who didn't know. And why am I talking about this? Because Jimmy Carter is the same person, for those who don't know, is the same person that signed the quote unquote Panama Act. And where am I going with this? Why am I talking about both the Department of Education as well as the Panama Act? Because they were both signed the Panama Act of 1979, as well as the Department of Education. They were both signed in 1979 by then President Jimmy Carter. Okay, and when it comes down to that Panama Act that was signed in 1979, it took, you cannot make this up, ladies and gentlemen, it took 30 years for this act to become in full effect, for Panama to have control of the Panama Canal. So yes, the act was signed in 1979. It was passed, how can I say this? It was signed in a little bit before 1979, but the House of Congress, they passed it in 1979. But it took 30 years for Panama to have a full control of the Panama Canal in 1999. And that, according to a lot of people, is when the chaos began. And what do I mean when I say when the chaos began? Here we go. China, as well as other countries, came in to send their goods through the Panama Canal, to send their goods through Mexico. Why? Because remember when I said that phrase, free trade agreement, okay? They didn't have to pay what? Tariffs. Right? So now here is Donald Trump in the present. Okay, he has already stated when it comes down to Panama, he said that Panama is being used and played by China. Okay, and Panama does not have control over the Panama Canal that was given to them by Jimmy Carter. So now, according to Donald Trump, he says the real country that has the power of the Panama Canal is not Panama. It's not the United States. It is China. This is why China goods are cheaper. They're cheaper. Why? Because they're not paying the tariffs. Then on top of that, right? Shout out to Humble Pie. Okay, when it comes down to that, that's when you have, people here who work for factories or want to work in manufacturing companies, and even with Canada, they are affected as well. They're affected as well. China, ladies and gentlemen, is playing. I'm just gonna call it for what it is. I'm gonna call it for what it is, right? People may not like what I'm gonna say, but I'm gonna say it. China is playing Mexico. China is playing the United States. China is playing Canada. China is playing Panama. China is playing a lot of these countries. Because at the end of the day, they're making the buck. They're making the buck. We're getting the short end of the stick. But Donald Trump is coming in and saying, when is enough going to be enough? But the question is, right? Now, I spoke on this another live. Is he doing too much all at once? Because he's put out these tariffs on these other countries, China included, right? But now you see how we're being affected when it comes down to, prices and stocks. Now, people are saying that this is temporary. This is what has to happen for the true gold to be at the end of the road. This is what has to happen, right? We have to go through a little bit of dust, right? A little bit of the storm to finally, see what we really want at the end of this road. And that is to get out of inflation. That is to be treated equally when it comes down to these tariffs. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Shout out to everybody in the live. Kelly Quinn says, better you should be praying for Donald Trump, because surely him and Elon and JD are ahead. Whoa, Kelly. You didn't have to say all of that, Kelly. You did not have to say all of that, Kelly. And please do not spam the chat. Please do not spam the chat. But we can agree to disagree. My goodness. Yes, shout out to Justin. Justin Michael says, cope. What is going on? One time in band camp says, that's a strong opinion. I hope you can learn more, as I'm happy that our tax money is no longer a slush fund. Yes. And shout out to one time in band camp. Like we can agree to disagree, right? But let's be respectful. Let's be respectful. Timmy, thank you for coming in, Timmy. Timmy says, yes, you're right, but they need to go back. If not, it doesn't look good, and the promises he made go all the way. And shout out to Timmy. Let me find you in the chat, Timmy. Thank you guys for coming in. And shout out to Humble Pie. Humble Pie says, this girl is amazing. I jump out and offer her marriage, but I'm sure she got a man. And thank you for coming in, Humble Pie. Shout out to Humble Pie. Earth Angel says, and incompetent as its finest in office. Thank you guys. Shout out to Humble Pie. Thank you guys for coming in. Michael says they are illegally identified as gang members. And that is why I said some people are feeling, when it comes down to the deportation of those 261 undocumented immigrants that were sent to CCOT, they feel that that was not constitution. That was unconstitutional. But thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politics. Graham. Gerald says this lady understands the situation. What is hard to be sure of, as if Trump will be able to pull off what he is trying to do. And that's what I want people to understand. Like, that's a good question, because Donald Trump said it in a press conference this week. I think it was this week. He said the buck stops here. It stops with him. And he said, you know, he will take the fault, the blame for what happens moving forward. So he will take the fault for it. And that's one thing I can say. A lot of politicians can't say that, right? A lot of politicians can't say they will take the buck if anything comes, right? Shout out to Gerald Burns Jr. for that. Larry Green says, I hope our leaders can get our country back on track. Shout out to Larry Green. Thank you for coming in. One time in the band camp says, yes, facts 100. Justin Michael says, I don't know why it's not showing you, Justin, on in the chat. Justin Michael says, our country. I don't know why it's not showing it in the chat on my end. Justin Michael says, our country has been sold out for decades by both sides. Trump is making an effort to bring manufacturing back to this country so the middle class can make a comeback. Shout out to Justin. And I'll concur with that, Justin. Absolutely concur with that. But like I stated, a lot of people are, questioning. And shout out to Joy. Joy says, keep going. You're doing great. Thank you so much. Shout out to Joy. Shout out to Joy. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Joy says, keep going. You're doing great. Thank you so much, you guys. And hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Big hugs to Joy. Big hugs to Humble Pie. Big hugs to One Time in Band Camp. Big hugs to Gerald. Thank you guys for coming in. And I will stand on this, right? Without you, there is no Politic Graham channel, right? Because I'm standing on this. This is a platform that welcomes everybody. This is a platform that I don't think some politicians understand. We have to work together, right? Justin Michael says, I was wondering why nobody was responding to my comments. I must be shadow. I didn't know either, Justin, because I was looking for you, Justin. I said, why is not coming in? Why is he not coming in? Because I can see you like on the actual stream that I'm on. I can still see, even when you retract it on YouTube, I can still see it. So I'm literally seeing, like, is Justin saying something wrong? But I don't see anything wrong with what you're saying, Justin. So I don't know. And I will say this to the mod team: thank you so much for handling and doing the duty. Now, Justin, I'm gonna ask you this, Justin Michael. Okay, as well as I'm trying to see somebody else in here. Okay, in this live, trying to see Justin Michael, Humble Pie, Green Burns Jr. Okay, now I will give mods out, okay, but I have to be very careful, right? I have to be very, very careful, okay, because I want to give you guys a mod mod, or should I say a blue jacket, but I have to be very, very careful. Okay, so my question is, because I had to take some mods away because people were just deleting channels. I mean, not channels, but deleting comments if it was pro-Trump or pro-Joe Biden. They're like deleting comments, right? So I have to be very careful when it comes down to who I give the mods to at this point. But I'm looking at you guys, so don't look. I see you guys, right? And I'm writing your names down. So if I see you guys again in the live, I'm taking note. But shouts out to Michael. Shout out to Justin Michael. Shout out to Larry Green. Shout out to Gerald Burns Jr. Donna Lindsay says, no Trump. Shout out to Donna Lindsay. Blockhead says, we have lost our spiritual connection. Anger is the enemy's greatest weapon. God is President King. Let's go. Let's God. Shout out to Blockhead, and blessings to you. Justin Michael says, I'm all for civil discourse, but I would definitely do it. Shout out to Justin. Shout out to Blockhead. Shout out to Lindsay, Donna Lindsay. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to Politic Graham. And like I stated, when it comes down to these tariffs, when it comes down to and even with the deportation, in some aspects, it does come together, right? And in others, it is the math, as they say, is not adding up, as they say. But what is adding up is we have to work together. We have to come to some type of agree to disagree, at least. Because if we continue to do this far left, this far right, we're never going to come to, a middle point. And that's one of the issues that is going on now in the real world, right? And when I say in the real world, how is it Ukraine and Russia still has not came to a full ceasefire agreement? Because that's also in the breaking news, right? When it comes down to Ukraine and Russia, Russia has agreed to do a partial ceasefire and not a full ceasefire. Okay, so we have to kind of figure this out and work together. But I will say this: when it comes down to all of those immigrants, undocumented immigrants in El Salvador right now, okay, the money's going to add up very soon, very quick, because President Bukele, he's not doing it for free. And I just told you guys, if you're just now coming in, it's $6 million per year to house those 261 undocumented immigrants. And thank you guys for coming in. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Shouts out to Joyce. Shouts out to Humble Pie. And if you would like, you can, if you want to support the channel, you can hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, as well as do what everybody's doing in the chat, comment, be a voice. And last but not least, if you want to be even a bigger supporter to the platform, we do welcome super stickers as well as memberships to the platform. And ladies and gentlemen, when we have a brief commercial break, we will have a brief commercial break. This is Politic Graham.
To a real mess with Russia, and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. Russia, and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into.
And hello, Lawrence. Who are you talking about, Lawrence? I can still read the comments. Please, we can agree to disagree long as you can be respectful amongst the community in this chat. As long as you can be respectful to the community in this chat. Justin Michael says, I'm concerned about some of the tariffs, but I think we need to be very strict on illegal immigration to show we will not tolerate it. And shout out to Justin Michael. Now, Lawrence, I'm going to ask you this question one more time. Whom are you talking about? Whom are you talking about, Lawrence? Because the old saying goes, no question is a stupid question. And shout out to the Mod Squad for, look, you did it, for handling it for me. Shout out. One time in Bandcamp says, how many Americans have lived because those prisoners aren't on our streets? Let me highlight that. Shout out to One Time in Bandcamp. Shout out to One Time in Bandcamp. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Now, for those who don't know, okay, and I want to talk about it one more time before I end the live, okay? Got to talk about it. When it comes down to how people are feeling about what has transpired with sending those 261 undocumented immigrants to El Salvador. Okay, Pam Bondi, she gave her 2 cents. She gave her 2 cents because of, like I stated earlier, federal judge by the name of James Boensberg. He did try to. One moment, you guys. One moment. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. But like I stated, when it comes down to Pam Bondi, I'm going to show a quick little clip of Pam Bondi, her stance on the actions of federal judge James Boensberg. Okay, her stance on it. And if you guys don't know, the federal judge that I'm speaking of, he is the federal judge that tried to put a halt at the quote-unquote deportation of those 261 immigrants, but Donald Trump, he moved forward without adhering to the request of the federal judge himself, James Boensberg. Okay, and in addition to that, now in the present, as of Thursday, okay, there will be an appeals being held on Monday between the DOJ, Trump administration, and, okay, just like I stated, that federal judge, James Boensberg, there will be an appeals held on Monday, okay? And when it comes down to Attorney General Pam Bondi, She gave her insight on this, all of what's been going on, as well as Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump, because of the actions of the federal judge, he has stated that the federal judge needs to be impeached. Okay? He stated that the federal judge, I repeat, needs to be impeached. And when it comes down to Pam Bondi, thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Want to show a little bit of clip of what the beautiful Pam Bondi had to say, because she's not playing no games. And this is quote unquote fair use, but I will do it after this commercial break. You're listening to Politic Graham.
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia, and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia, and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia, and everything else he signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia, and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia, and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia, and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen.
Hello, you guys. This is Politic Graham. Thank you guys for coming in. Shouts out to Kendall. Shouts out to One Time in Bandcamp. Shouts out to Justin Michael. Justin Michael says, I agree, Alice Wood. Shouts out to Alice Wood. Alice Wood says he wants to impeach anyone who doesn't agree with him. And like I stated, we welcome everybody, okay, ladies and gentlemen, okay? So this is a platform where we do welcome Democrats as well as Republicans. And who is Alice Wood talking about? Shouts out to Alice Wood. Thank you for coming in. She is talking about Donald Trump, okay? And what has happened recent, I forgot to talk about this, but I have to talk about this a little bit in this live, okay? Donald Trump made a decision when it came down to, if you know, you know, airstrikes, okay? Airstrikes. And where was these airstrikes that he gave the okay to do, okay? He gave this decision, this order to do when it came down to the organization called Houthi, okay? And it is not that far from Yemen. And why did he make that executive decision to, in regards to United States airstrikes with this organization, against this organization? Because it all goes back to, let's just speak on it. Because of this group, they disagree with the actions, okay, with the actions that's going on between the war with Israel in Gaza. I'll say it that way. What's going on in Gaza? This organization known as Houthi, they have been taking over and blocking ships from coming through in the Red Sea. They have been blocking ships. They have been doing things to show that they are against what's quote unquote going on in Gaza. Okay, and why did they block those ships? Because that also plays a factor when it comes down to what? When it comes down to importing goods, when it comes down to money, okay? So thank you guys for coming in. Now, I just wanted to talk about that just for a quick little moment, okay? Because I don't want to get too much in that. But Trump ordered strikes on Iran. Iran backed up organization called Houthi rebels in Yemen. Okay, and he gave this order back on March the 15th, Saturday. Okay, and this is the same day that he also signed what? He also signed an act to send those 261 undocumented immigrants to El Salvador. Okay, so these are a number of things that this is what I'm talking about when it comes down to Donald Trump is doing so many things and acting, doing things really, really fast and doing a lot of things more than I can say that Joe Biden did. Okay. But when it goes back to like what Alice Wood, shout out to Alice Wood. Alice Wood says Donald Trump wants to impeach anyone who doesn't agree with him. Okay. And because of, I want to show the judge. And shout out to Alice. I want to actually show the judge that Donald Trump is saying should be impeached. Okay. According to Donald Trump, he's stating that this particular federal judge by the name of Judge James Borsberg should be quote unquote impeached. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And because this particular federal judge tried to come in and stop the deportation of those immigrants, undocumented immigrants, now we're in a place where a number of lawsuits have been filed. And according to Pam Bondi, okay, as of now, there's over, I want to make sure I'm accurate on this. There's over, There's over 100 lawsuits. Over 100 lawsuits right now against the Trump administration. And in February alone, 14 injunctions have been filed. Just to kind of give you guys a heads up of what's going on here in America. Now, I will say this, when it comes down to quote unquote Pam Bondi, the beautiful Pam Bondi, and thank you guys for coming in. You are listening to Politic Graham. Fair use, fair use. And before I show the clip, to protect this platform, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You're listening to quote unquote Politic Graham. And before I quote unquote move forward to show the clip with what beautiful Pam Bondi had to say, I will read this fair use copyright disclaimer. Fair use copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, commenting, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, personal, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. And ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to and watching. This is Politic Graham. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Now I will play quote unquote, one moment. I will play a clip of Pam Bondi with where she stands on the response of the federal judge James Borsberg. Okay, because when it comes down to Pam, the Attorney General Pam Bondi, She says that these judges and Democrats are trying to still trying to take control of Americans, okay? And trying to take control of Americans in all fashions, financially, education-wise, as well as defense as well. So she stated this, and like I stated, she said that they're doing everything to still try to have control, even with Donald Trump being the 47th president. She's saying they're still trying to have control and not give the control back to the states. Okay. And thank you guys for coming in. And as I stated, fair use. This is Politic Graham that you're listening to.
No right to ask those questions. You have one unelected federal judge trying to control foreign policies, trying to control the Alien Enemies Act, which they have no business presiding over. And there are 261 reasons why Americans are safer now. That's because those people are out of this country. The judge had no business, no power to do what he did. And Will, he came in on a...
So this is how Attorney General Pam Bondi is moving. Okay. This is her response. This is just to kind of give you, that energy that she is giving. This is where she stands on it. Okay. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Now I'm going to play one more clip when it comes down to Pam Bondi and with the deportation of the immigrants, undocumented immigrants being sent to El Salvador. Okay, this is just kind of giving you a heads up of how the quote unquote administration stands. And thank you guys for coming in. Hit that like button.
No right to ask those questions. You have one unelected federal judge trying to control.
Now, I want to pause. The questions that she's saying that this judge, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Well, she's stating that this quote unquote judge, this federal judge, James Borsberg, okay, if you can see this particular judge that we're looking at, according to this appeal that he has put in, okay, he wants the DOJ Trump administration to answer the following questions, okay? Because he feels that this was not constitutional to send those immigrants, undocumented immigrants, to El Salvador without just cause and due process. Now, these are the questions that he wants answered, okay? First question, what time did the plane take off? Okay, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. What we're talking about. He wants to know when it comes down to deportation of these undocumented immigrants. The first question, what time did the plane take off from the United States soil and from where? Number two, what time did the plane leave the U.S. airspace? Number three, what time did the plane land in El Salvador? Number four, when were these individuals transferred out of U.S. custody? And last but not least, how many were abroad? Now, I want people to understand this when it comes down to these key questions. The reason he's asking these questions is because of individuals such as this gentleman, Mr. Javier Gassar. Okay, he's one of the immigrants, undocumented immigrants, that according to his mother, okay, was wrongfully obtained after he turned himself in. Okay, after he turned himself in. And according to his mother, the last time she had communication with 24-year-old Javier Garcia was Saturday. And that is the same day those undocumented immigrants were deported. Now, I want people to understand this. According to his mother, his face, his name was pulled off. Want people to take note on this. His name was taken off the U.S. custody. Okay, website. It was taken off. It was pulled. And now she cannot get a hold of him. She doesn't know where he is. And like I stated, if you were watching earlier in this live, for the prisoners that are in El Salvador, in that mega prison known as CCOT, once you are in that prison, you lose all communications with all your loved ones. And there are no cars there. You have no access to cars. You have no access to even writing. Okay. So I want people to understand this. This is why this particular judge, okay, now he's putting an appeals out, and he's asking DOJ these particular questions in an appeals that will be held this Monday. Okay. And I'm kind of trying to speed it up for you guys. Also, what's been going on that should be signed today is an executive order. Donald Trump is planning on signing another executive order to give the director of Department of Education, Linda McMahon, the instruction to fully dismantle the Department of Education and send it back to the states. Okay, back to the states. And if you don't know who is over the department, if you don't know who's over the department right now of education, it is Linda McMahon. Okay, so that's who is going to be dismantling the Department of Education. Okay, and if you guys don't know, okay, she is the wife, okay, to multi-billionaire Vince McMahon, okay, and his net worth is $3 billion, okay, $3 billion, right? So a lot of people are feeling that, okay, that these particular individuals are not in touch with, average working middle class American citizens, right? These are multi-billionaires, but I want people to understand this, okay? When the powers were given to politicians and other individuals who were not billionaires or who were not multi-billionaires, who were not members of upper class, they did not handle the funds accordingly. And thank you guys for coming in. This is Politic Graham. Please hit that like button. Going back into the comments in a minute. You are listening to Politic Graham, and this is quote unquote fair use. Fair use, fair use. And last but not least, Donald Trump, he did put out a statement in regards to, and that's what I wanted to talk about. He did put out a statement under his Truth Social platform. He put out a statement stating that the pardons that Joe Biden, in his word, he said, and I quote, Sleepy Joe, gave to the unselect committee of political thugs and many others are hereby declared vacant, void, and of no further force or effect because of the fact they were done by auto pen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them, and the people that did may have committed a crime. Therefore, those of the unselect committee who destroyed or deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year, quote unquote, in his words, not mine, Donald Trump says, their quote unquote witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they are probably responsible for documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country, Crooked Joe Biden. Now, that was the comments from Donald Trump. And the reason I wanted to read that is because when it comes down to that committee that he's speaking about, one of the members I had talked about is this gentleman right here, who is of House of Senate in California. He's one of the senators of California, and that is Adam Sniff. Okay, so he's one of the members. And then also we cannot forget Dick Cheney's daughter, Liz Cheney. She was also one of the members of the committee, Liz Cheney. And I'm going to give a little, just kind of name the people that are on this, that was on this quote unquote committee. Okay. Just some of them, not all of them. Okay. Like I said, like I stated, one of them was Liz Cheney. Quote unquote Liz Cheney. Now I want people to understand this. Okay. If Donald Trump is saying that the pardons are void, okay, then the next question is, who else will be considered void? Would it also be Hunter Biden? Would it also be Hunter Biden? But like I stated, I'm going to have a brief commercial break. And thank you guys for coming in. You're listening to Politic Graham.
Got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind
here. Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind
here. Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind
here. Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind
here. Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. Russia and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it, and he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen, so how would he know?
And thank you guys for coming in. Shouts out to everybody in the live. Thank you so much for coming in. Going back into the live. Thank you guys for coming in. Shouts out to Justin Michael. Shouts out to Dwayne Paul. Shouts out to One Time in Bandcamp. Thank you guys for coming in. Dwayne Paul says, you got the facts, girl. One Time in Bandcamp says, I grew up in San Diego. Hello, Dwayne. Welcome. Yes. Hello, Dwayne. Thank you guys for coming in. One Time in Bandcamp says, every time we get a person in as president, we get JFK. Oh, no. And it's our own. 7 U.S. presidents are cousins, the elite. And thank you guys for coming in. Now, before I end this live, hit that like button. I do want to just name the people that Donald Trump is basically stating that Joe Biden's pardons are vacant. Okay, and the members that he is naming that is part of the J6 committee include James Biden, his brother, Joe Biden's brother, James Biden, as well as James Biden's wife, Sarah Biden, as well as sister Valerie Biden and her husband, John Owens. You cannot make this up, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Anthony Fauci, also retired General Mark Milley, as well as Liz Cheney, Benny Thompson. That is just to name the individuals that Donald Trump is stating that is not gonna, the pardons that Joe Biden gave these individuals on January the 20th are, as of now, what he's stating is void. That is the statement that he put out. And thank you guys for coming in. Please hit that like button, hit subscribe to the channel. And if you would like to support the channel even more, you can like, comment, subscribe. And last but not least, if you would like to even support even more, we do welcome super stickers, as well as you can become a member to the platform. And thank you guys for coming in. Shouts out to Justin. Reading the comments right now. Thank you guys. Justin Michael says, exactly. They have had years as career system politicians and never cut a thing and only added to the government. Shouts out to Justin Michael. Shouts out to Dwayne Paul says, love the video. Thank you so much. Roseanne, you know what? I'm not even repeating. I see, this is why in this system that I have on my end, I can read comments that YouTube is not going to allow to go through, and I see why. I see why. I'm not going to repeat what Roseanne said in these comments, but I'm glad that it's not being seen on YouTube's end. And shouts out to the mod squad. Shouts out to everyone that's on the mod team. Thank you so much, you guys. One Time in Bandcamp. Thank you so much for handling the business. Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you so much, everybody that is on the mod team. Thank you so much. And as always, I always end the live with reading positive positive affirmations to start our day. To start our day. And it goes like this. Rule number 1, eliminate the if. Focus on the present. Rule number 2, focus on self, not others. Rule number 3, tell yourself, I will learn something new every day. Number 4, tell yourself, I will not get upset at what I don't have control of. And last but not least, rule number 5, advocate for yourself, because if you don't advocate for yourself, who will speak up? And thank you so much, you guys, for coming in. Justin Michael says, I'm guessing it was a yes. It was not a good comment, Justin. And absolutely, shout out to Justin Michael. It was not a good comment, and it was of no real substance. Shout out to Justin Michael. You got it. And one time in Bandcamp says, my pleasure. And thank you so much. And I'm going to, let me see how the poll is looking. As of now, is Trump following the Constitution? 53% says yes, he's following the Constitution. And I'm going to end that. One moment. I don't know if it ended on I don't know if you guys can still see it on your end. 53% says yes, he is following the Constitution, and 46% says no, he is not following the Constitution. Tammy Pierce says one time in bank camp. Yes, it is wild how they are all related. Yes. I mean, that's why I said when it comes down to these pardons, these pardons that Biden did on the day of Donald Trump's inauguration on January 20th, he pardoned his siblings, okay? James Biden. He pardoned his sister, Valerie Biden. He pardoned their husband and wife, okay? And last but not least, he pardoned Liz Cheney, Dr. Anthony Fauci. If you know, you know. So it is really shocking, but that is why I asked the question in the live, right? In this video as well. Who is not constitutional? Trump or Biden, right? This is a platform that welcomes everybody, and we talk about both sides. I'm going to add this poll in before I end this live. I just want to add it. I'm kind of curious what you guys say. I know what you guys are going to say. I think I know what you guys are going to say. Who is following the Constitution? I'm going to put it in the polls. I'm starting a new poll. Constitution. I'm starting a new poll. It's going to only be up for maybe like 10 minutes, maybe less than 5. I'm just kind of curious what the people in the chat will say. Okay, who is following the Constitution? Trump or Joe Biden? Corey Rogers says Jimmy Carter pardoned his brother, y'all, just got uneducated. Corey, we welcome everybody, but please be respectful, okay? Please be respectful, Corey. We welcome everybody, but please be respectful, and please do not spam this chat. Richard says, I'd rather have a president that falls up the stairs than a president that lies all the time. And thank you for coming in, Richard. Thank you for coming in. We can take that as long as you're being respectful to the chat. So we welcome everybody. Thank you for coming in, Richard. Justin Michael says, unfortunately, Richard, Biden did both. Shout out to Justin. One time in Bandcamp said tricky He didn't like Biden at all. Tammy Pierce says, Donna, you think Kamala would have been a better president? Really? Now, why am I not able to read the comments? Is somebody deleting? Please don't delete the comments. If they are being respectful, let them be. Now, if they're not being respectful, then, handle mod business, okay? But don't just, remove comments just because they have a disagreement with your views. And shout out to Tammy. Tammy, thank you for coming in. And that's a great question. Donna, do you really think Kamala would have been a better president? Now, that's a shock. I don't know if Kamala Harris would have been the best president. I don't know. Concerned homeowner victim says Trump. And thank you for coming in, Concerned. Benny Mac says Richard, Biden did both. Fell up the stairs and lied. Shout out to Benny Mac. Thank you, Benny Mac, for coming in. Richard says, you people really think Trump follows the Constitution? Well, this is a platform we welcome everybody, right? So, Richard, you are going to have some people that, are pro-Trump, and then also there are going to be people like you that are not pro-Trump, right? So we do welcome everybody. And thank you for coming in and being the voice. Tammy says, Richard, Biden. Tammy, you guys are a trip. Thank you guys for coming in. Benny Mac says she would have been terrible. Kamala Harris as president would have been terrible. And I'm going to highlight that. Thank you for coming in. Thank you so much for coming in. Benny Mac says Kamala would have been terrible. Yes, I absolutely concur with Benny Mac. Terrible. Corey Rogers says Trump said he was going to temporarily suspend the Constitution. Look now, allegedly. Okay. Now we don't want to put all that. Allegedly. Okay. Thank you guys for coming in. I appreciate all the support. Thank you so much for coming in the live. Thank you so much, you guys, everybody that has came into this live. Now, with this short poll that I have, because I didn't want to keep it up too long, it says 58% says that Trump is following the Constitution. 42% says Joe Biden is following the Constitution. And thank you guys for coming in. Let's get those likes up. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the support. Until then, this is Politic Graham. And before I end this live, I will read the quote-unquote disclaimer. Fair use copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, commenting, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is the use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use attempts to balance in favor of fair use. And thank you guys for coming in. Tammy, you told no lie. Tammy Pierce says Department of Education is gone. And amen to that. Thank you guys for coming in. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, comment if you want. We welcome super stickers and memberships to the platform. You're listening to Politic Graham. Last but not least, we welcome everybody, no matter what gender you are, race you are, culture you have, race, no matter what. We welcome everyone as long as you're what? Respectful. Thank you so much. It's Politic Graham.
I guess I should clear my mind here.
Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia. And everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it. And he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen. So how would he know?
I guess I should clear my mind here.